Hello and welcome to our very first Virtual Wisdom Circle episode of the Heart Behind the Daily Hustle of Champions, powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cindy O'Neill Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections, a community I've had the joy of leading since 2009. Today's conversation to connect features the fabulous Karen Koenig joining us from Surprise, Arizona. Welcome, Karen. We're so glad you're here. So, the purpose of our virtual wisdom circle, the heart behind the daily hustle of champions, is to spotlight our champion connectors, elevate their visibility, and reveal the heart, habits, and wisdom that fuel their daily success. This complimentary offering is open to all and is designed to cultivate a nurturing environment where authentic stories are shared, practical insights are exchanged, and meaningful connections can truly flourish. So I am thrilled to officially launch, drumroll please, this new Exceptional Connections offering and excited for the conversations that it will inspire. So at around the 35, 40-minute mark, we'll open the lines for Q&A. So as you listen, feel free to take any notes and ask questions or write down your insights that you'd like to share later in the program. So before we dive into the secret sauces behind Karen Koenig's success, I'd love to invite her to share a bit about her background for those exceptional connectors who may not yet know her. And Karen, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I'm Karen Koenig, and as you know, I am a financial advisor and I own KK Financial Solutions. But I'm going to take you on a journey today that's going to give you a little insight into me. So I'm not going to do too much of an introduction about who I am, other than because you know who I am on the surface of my business and that kind of stuff. But I'm going to delve into and do something a little bit different today, a little bit unique. So I'm just going to go right into my presentation that kind of gives you the heart of who I am, and then kind of give you the excerpt of what this whole entire program is. So I'm going to start off this program just from the beginning so we can dive in. All right. So to start off, as the first presenter behind the heart of, whoops, didn't want to do that. Go back. So as the first presenter behind for the heart behind the daily hustle of champions, Cindy had asked me to answer some questions that you see on the screen. And I believe that these will be the basic questions that she's going to have the monthly follow-on presenters answer as well. And what I'm going to do is probably a unique approach to how to answer these questions, but I feel like I need to tell you about who I am and how I got to where I am today so I can answer these questions effectively for you. So bear with me as I take you through the journey of Karen Koenig from childhood up to the present. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but I am going to take you through a bit of a journey, all right? So it starts with I was born and raised in Nebraska. Maybe some of you know that, maybe some of you don't. And I spent 36 years of my life there. And I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. And after I got married, we moved to Seward, Nebraska, which is about probably 20 minutes outside of Lincoln. And both of my parents were in the military, and that's how they met. My dad was an EMT, and my mom was a nurse. My dad was enlisted, and my mother was an officer. And I don't know if you know anything about the military, but enlisted and officers back in the day were not supposed to be married because that's a big no-no. So when they finally met and got married, my mother had to get out of the military, but that's kind of a little bit down the road story. My dad, after they got out of the military and started having children, my dad received his associate's degree later in life as an electrical engineer. And so back when they met, they did a lot of traveling. And also, not only were enlisted and officers not supposed to be married to each other, they made the officer get out of the military. And when my mother started having children, they also made women get out of the military when they got pregnant and started having children. So they no longer do that these days, but that's kind of the way the military was back in the day. So another thing about my past is my parents got divorced when I was 10, and we there was a little stint of we moved from Nebraska to New Mexico, and we lived there for 9 months. And then after we got divorced, my mother moved us back to Nebraska because that's where all of our friends were. And she kind of left my dad in Nebraska. So that was kind of a little bit of a thing that happened with my parents. But that was kind of good for us kids because that's where all our friends were. That's where all of her friends were. And also, I have a huge musical background. So through school in the fourth grade, I started playing the flute. So usually in school, kids started taking or went into musical in the fifth grade, but down in New Mexico, they actually started you in the fourth grade. So I had 1 year up on kids when I went into music back in Nebraska. And then through the time in school, I actually went from fourth grade all the way up to being a senior. I played the flute. I actually got into competitions. I had lessons through all of high school, and I actually taught uh, I taught students because I got to the point where my teacher couldn't teach me anything else, music theory and all those types of things, because I actually was going to go into and I actually was offered a scholarship in music at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. But my mom got sick when I was 19, so I had to pivot and drop out of college and go to work. So that's a little bit of my background there. And then the other part is I decided to go into the military at age 21. Otherwise, I never would have pursued kind of what happened in the rest of my life. And then I'm going to go into some more parts, but I spent 26 years in the military and then 6 years in aerospace and then finally 10 years in financial services. And I'm going to go into a lot of that background in the next few slides because it tells a lot about who I am and how I got to where I am. But I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of background of kind of where I got to where I am and why I went into the military because nobody else in my family was in the military, and nobody else in my family has a college degree. So that's a little bit of the history up until I got out of high school. So the next part is the 26 years that I spent in the military. So I'm giving you a little bit of the rank system here because I wanted to show you that I was enlisted from 1987 to 2001, and I'm showing you the different what they call AFSCs, which is just the different jobs, if you would say, that I had in the military as enlisted. And I joined in 1987 when women weren't actually welcomed in the military or There was some men that in 87 that I joined with that didn't care that if women were in the military. It was more the men that had been in the military for 20 and 25 years prior to that that didn't really welcome women in the military. So I was constantly told at the time when I got in that you're going to get out, you're going to get married, you're never going to last. And the reason why a lot of them said that was because I was the only woman in my shop because I tested it in the highest areas in every area of the ASVAB, and I decided to become an electronic mechanic, which is very highly unlikely for most women. And even when I was in tech school, I was the only woman that was in the follow-on schooling for after basic training. And even when I out processed to go to basic training, the first sergeant pulled me aside and said, "Are you sure you want to go to electronic mechanic school after basic training? Because we have an opening for an administrative assistant up in the orderly room, and that would probably be better suited for you." And I just looked at him and said, "No, I think I'd rather be an electronic mechanic." So there was a lot of that type of sexual harassment, I would say, going on even before I even left my base. So, started out as an electronic mechanic and was doing that until about 1993 when we switched from it was RF-4C, uh, RF-4C reconnaissance plane, which was a jet that had um, they were cameras that was in the nose of the plane and in the belly of the plane, and they were used during Vietnam to take pictures, reconnaissance pictures, so they could see when the enemy had things on the ground and that kind of stuff. And what I did is we would actually download, we would take, we there was a section that would download the film and process the film, but what we did is we worked on those actual camera systems. So when they didn't work or there's problems with them, I had to electronically troubleshoot those particular systems. And we had to actually take those camera systems out of the nose of the plane, and there was doors that opened up that were on cable systems, and the guys that I worked with in the shop, those cable systems, the doors were heavy and they were on cables. And I constantly had to prove myself. And those doors were supposed to be open and shut with two people. And the guys would stand there with their arms crossed and they would make me shut those doors by myself, even though that was not something that was supposed to be done quality control wise, or even was it safe for that to be done. But they would do it when people weren't looking and they would make me shut those doors by myself. And I really couldn't say anything because what was I to do? It was like either do it or not do it and be ridiculed. So those were the things that I had to do during that time. And then in 1993, we switched aircraft to the KC-135 tankers, and I became the NCOIC in the maintenance group orderly room. So, ended up being an administrative person anyway at that point. And then after that, decided to use my brain a little bit and became a database manager. And what does that mean? There is a computer system that tracks all the parts that are put on the aircraft and used on the plane at any one time. And I programmed that system to help keep track of the parts and uh, develop the reports for all of the supervisors to figure out, what kind of reports did they want to pull off of the system to, like how many parts did my shop use on any one day, what parts were breaking the most, and those types of things. So I basically became a computer programmer at that point. Then I got my bachelor's degree. And so, like I told you, I put my life on hold, joined the Air Force when I was 21. But in the background, I was pursuing my degree a little bit at a time. And so I wasn't active duty Air Force. What I was in the National Guard, Air National Guard. So what does that mean? That means you can also have a civilian job at the same time. So I was actually working a civilian job in the background, and then I was going to what's called drill once a month. So this was doing this once a month. So I was actively pursuing a degree behind the scenes and going to get my degree. And I was doing a degree, and it got kind of it was taking too much time, so I decided to do a degree completion program, and I was going at night. I ended up getting pregnant with my son at the time, and so I ended up getting my degree and walking down and getting my diploma when my son was 2.5 years old. So it took me a while to get my bachelor's degree. And why am I telling you that? Because in 2001, I decided to become an officer, and you have to become an officer before you are 35. And I became an officer exactly like a month before I turned 35. And there's a story behind that as well. I had to fight to get promoted to be an officer because there was one slot in the maintenance group to become an officer, and there was four of us that applied for it, me, one female, and four males. And there was a commanding officer at the time that didn't want a woman to be promoted to an officer. So the the board that did all of the interviews, they had to make sure that the scoring system was done completely correctly, and they had to show the scoring system to that commanding officer to prove that I scored better than other people, to prove that I was the best person for the job to be promoted to an officer at the time. So once again, I was um, discriminated against because I was a woman, I felt like. So I've always had to jump through hoops because I was a woman, and it's always been an uphill battle, I feel like. Um, but on the positive side, so you can see all the different jobs that I was on in as an officer. Why so many? Because as an officer, they ultimately are trying to groom you to be uh, the commander of the base, whether you're going to be the commander or not. So they move you around to different spots to groom you to learn all the different areas of the base. So I was an executive officer, which means I was the basically the right hand person to the group commander. I was a services commander, which what does that mean? That's the commander that's in charge of the dining facility, the child development center. When you're deployed, it's um, the when you're in charge of all of the, what am I trying to say? The entertainment that comes onto the base. So I was actually deployed to Diego Garcia for 6 months, which is a little island off the Horn of Africa in the Indian Ocean for 6 months as a services commander, and I worked with the Navy. And then I was a communications commander. I was a maintenance group administration officer. I was an operations officer. And then I ended up my career as the director of personnel for the base. And I ended up as a major. So when I was enlisted, I went from a slick sleeve, they call, which is no rank, all the way up to a tech sergeant, which you'll see right there is an E6. And then as an officer, I was promoted all the way up to an O4, which is a major. And I retired in 2013. So when you look at how was she military for that many years, and then she was overworking at Boeing, and then those other things that I'm going to talk about, it's because I was Air National Guard, and you are able to work a civilian job and you can be in the Air National Guard at the same time. Now, I did work 14 and a half years full time for the Air National Guard. And what that is considered is federal civil service, and wearing the uniform is a requirement of the job, and being in the Air National Guard is a requirement of being in that position. So when an active duty officer or commander comes onto the base, it doesn't look any different than going onto an active duty base. So I do have 14 and a half years of federal service in addition to um, being in the civilian community, if it were, and then being on the military side. So I've on the positive side, I've gone to several different places in the military. I've gone to Italy several times, Denmark. I've gone to France. Again, like I said, I've been deployed to Diego Garcia. And then along the way, more education. But I did get divorced in 2008, and I got my first MBA in project management, which I paid for. So the bachelor's degree that I got is another positive that I got from the military. Um, that was paid for with the GI Bill. So I actually got my bachelor's degree paid for by the GI Bill. The MBA I paid for myself. So that's a little bit history on the military side. And then using my military experience in 2009, excuse me, I got a job working for a company called Telephonics, and I started working. There's a picture in the upper left-hand corner that's called a MSS system, mobile surveillance system, and a company called Telephonics built that. And what that is it's a mobile surveillance system on a built on the back of an F-450 truck that you can drive into the desert, and there is fixed towers that have that exact same system on them sitting on the southern border, and the premise of those trucks is to drive in between those fixed towers, and all of these surveillance systems are intended to look over the border into the southern, basically into Mexico. That's what these are for. And it's working. So you see the insignia for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So they were our customer. Telephonics built the system, but did not get the service contract. Boeing did. So Boeing, in their infinite wisdom, hired me and my technician. We were the only ones that knew how to work on these systems and the electronics that went with it. And they hired us, and we taught uh, a set of Border Patrol agents on how to use the system once they drove these out into the desert. Um, then we finally turned that over to civilian Customs and Protection people. Um, we worked in an unmarked warehouse in southern Tucson, and we finally turned that whole entire system over to them in, when was it? I think it was 2012, 2013. Um, so when they decided to turn that over, you'll see bottom left-hand corner, I started working, I got sent to Los Alamos, New Mexico, and I started working for the National Reconnaissance Office. I had a top secret SCI clearance, so the old adage, I can't really tell you what I was doing, otherwise I would have to kill you. But all I can tell you about that is if you look up the NRO, that's not classified. I was working as a project manager there. What's classified is what was inside of the facility. Um, the Boeing side was we worked in tandem with Lockheed Martin. Seafoam was the name of the project. We didn't even wear Boeing badges. We wore the Seafoam badge, and basically what I was doing was we were remodeling portions of the building and upgrading portions of the building for the top secret side of the areas that were there. Um, the other part that I can tell you is um, some of my customers were the CIA, but I can't say anything else other than that. And then I didn't want to work for or live in Los Alamos, New Mexico, so I My mentor at the time said, well, in order for you to get ahead in Boeing, you probably should learn the commercial side of Boeing. So I applied and got a job in Washington State, and that's how I ended up in Washington. So, just so you know, I was a little bit of a timeline, Nebraska, moved to Tucson, and when I got divorced, or I moved down to Tucson because my husband at the time was a Army helicopter pilot, and he was a instructor pilot down at the Western Aviation Training Site, which is in Tucson. That's how I ended up with Boeing in Tucson. Then went to Los Alamos. Then got the job up in Everett at the Everett plant in Everett, and worked on the upper right-hand corner on the 787-8 interiors program. That's what you see as the interior side of the 787. And I was an interiors manager, but I was getting paid as a project manager. So I was one of the highest paid interior managers at Boeing at the time because they didn't downgrade what I was getting paid as at the Boeing site. So that's kind of the history at Boeing. Started out in Tucson, went to Los Alamos, and then went up to Washington at the Everett uh, Boeing plant. So that's how I ended up in Washington in 2012. Is That's kind of my path to getting up to Washington State. So that's how I ended up there. So now that kind of takes me to 2015 and the 10 years that I've been in financial services. So I left Boeing in June of 2015. And why did I go to Edward Jones? Well, that technician that I told you about that worked for me at Telephonics and at Boeing, he ended up quitting Boeing and he started at Edward Jones. And I thought, well, hey, I'm gonna see. And he was my financial advisor at the time. And so I approached him and I said, well, tell me about financial advising and tell me about Edward Jones. And as you know, he was a technician, but back in the day, he used to be a telephone lineman. And I thought, well, gee, if he can be successful at financial advising, I certainly can because he was a telephone lineman. So he helped me get into Edward Jones. And what I did is from June of 2015 through December of 2015, I studied for the Series 7 and the 66. And why did it take me so long? Because Karen failed the Series 7 twice. And when you fail the Series 7, the first time you have to wait, I believe it is 6 weeks. And then the second time you have to wait 3 or 4 months to retest. So but I finally passed the third time because my supervisor at the time took a chance on me and she allowed me to take it a third time, which is pretty unheard of. So I wouldn't be a financial advisor at this time if my supervisor at the time would have not taken a chance on me. So I finally graduated from the final school down that they have down in Tempe, Arizona. Amazingly enough, it's down here in January of 2016, the week of my 50th birthday. So that's when I graduated and actually got my license to be a financial advisor. And that's when you all probably know me from. I took over the Mukilteo office there in Washington. And I built my business by networking and I took over the office. It had 5 million in assets under management, and I grew it from to 35 million in assets in management in 5 years. And the standard was 25 million in assets over a 5 year period. So I exceeded their standard. But why did I leave? Well, I got disenchanted with Edward Jones during COVID, and I decided to walk away from them. And because they had too many rules and regulations, and um, I I felt like they weren't paying me enough for what I was doing. And I had talked to some other independent advisors, and I decided to in May of 2021, create KK Financial Solutions, and I did it from scratch. So that kind of gets to the point where some of you know me is from KK Financial Solutions. And that really kind of was a eye-opening experience for me because I had to I signed an agreement where I could not approach any of my previous clients for 1 year. So only half of my book came with me, which is pretty normal. So, and oddly enough, even though I had my own office and a were considered a business owner at Edward Jones, we were W-2 employees. So I went from being a W-2 employee to being paid 4 times a year because that's the way commission in the independent world is. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I had to kind of learn from scratch. I had to create all of my systems. I had to pay for things that were all inclusive at Edward Jones that I had no idea were all inclusive. So the software, the financial planning software, all that stuff I now pay for, which I didn't have to over at Edward Jones. And I had to learn how to budget because when you're used to being paid every 2 weeks and you had now I'm being paid once every 3 months, that's really hard to learn how to budget your money. And I also had to rely on a second income, which I still do today, because what I did is I got hired because I love being associated with the government. I actually work a job for Department of Homeland Security, which some of you probably do or don't know. I work it part-time. I'm a contractor for Department of Homeland Security, and I work that for 4 hours in the morning every day, in addition to being a financial advisor. So I I really I I needed the income at first. I don't need the income now, but I do it because one, I enjoy it, but two, it's because it's my fun money now. So that's how I'm able to go on lots of trips and those kind of things. And it's enabled me to be able to a lot of you don't know this, but I just bought a new house for Ron because he's always wanted a bigger house with a 3-car garage, and now I'm able to present that to him, and we close on our house on Wednesday. So that's a little side note. So yeah, yeah. All right. So um, now I'm gonna tell you a little bit about. Did I skip a slide? No. All right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my secret sauce. So what I did is I found through all of that stuff, I found my purpose. I took everything that I learned in the military, being at Boeing, being at Edward Jones, and then in 2021 when I opened my boutique financial services, um, I then in 2022, Ron wanted to retire, so we decided to move to Arizona. So that's the reasoning behind why we moved to Arizona. So, and that's where I currently reside. And the other thing is I decided to use my talents. So I wrote a book about being in those three male dominated fields. A lot of you know about this. Woman on Top, How to Win in a Woman's World. That's why I wrote the book. I've been featured in several magazines. I've been hosted on several podcasts, and I was featured on Cairo 7 there in Washington for being an outstanding woman in business. And I keep reinventing myself. So I was named Most Empowering Financial Services CEO in 2023. I was named Most Influential Financial Services Businesswoman in 2024. I was named Financial Planning CEO of the Year in 2024. And just this last year, I was most recently featured on the cover of CEO Vision magazine as one of the top 25 most charismatic leaders of 2025. And there's an article in that magazine about me. So that's kind of my secret sauce is taking all of that and then doing all of these things and reinventing myself. And then what is it that I live by? So through all of that, I want to talk about my values. So the Air Force has core values. And sorry, I'm getting emotional. Um, the Air Force values are integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And integrity to me is doing what is right, even when no one is watching. So even the smallest things. So like when I was in uniform, we were always required to wear a hat. And there was people that would go places and not wear their hats. And even when you go to the gas station, you get out of your car and you pump your gas, you're supposed to put your hat on. And there was people that wouldn't do that. So that's integrity, doing what's right even when no one is watching. Put your hat on when you get out to pump your gas. Service before self. So that's prior. That what does that mean to me? That's prioritizing others over my personal desires, demonstrating discipline, self-control, and respect. And then excellence in all I do. So continuously improving myself, mastering my craft, performing in the highest standards in everything that I do, big or small. And then what are my daily habits for success? So every morning I start with 35 to 45 minutes of daily devotional. So you see those things right there. Well, spirituality is important to me. So I have that little four part right there. Health is important to me. Spending time with my soon to be spouse, Ron, is important to me. And what I also do is I volunteer on the grand marketing team and I golf on the Lady Grand Niners, which is basically we golf every Tuesday and we golf 9 holes. And then I recently joined the Grand Stitchers because believe it or not, I like to quilt. So and so I started volunteering with the Grand Stitchers. And so where does all that come from? It comes from pivotal moments in my life. So here's some pivotal areas in my life. They were when I was fairly young. Um, at 16, I got baptized. I had a friend's family who used to drive to my house every Sunday, pick me up, and take me to church because the rest of my family didn't go to church. And I got basically I'm Methodist, and that's where I got baptized was in the Methodist church, and they believe that you get baptized when you understand why you're being baptized. So I took the classes, I got confirmed, and I got baptized in front of the church when I was 16. So when I turned my life over to God, I joined the youth group, and we did what was called the Appalachia Service Project, and I went to Kentucky with them, and we helped out a pig farmer do clean up his pig stalls and do some work on his uh, pig barns and that type of stuff. And we actually helped him deliver. He had some sows that were delivering babies, and we helped some piglets come into the world. We also went to Utah and we helped a group home for mentally challenged adults. So that just led me to volunteerism and passion for people. That's kind of where that came from. And then my mom got sick when I was 19, and I had to commit her to a hospital and then to a nursing home. And what I learned from that is who I could rely on because I wasn't legally old enough to do any of that, and I had to rely on a family friend's nephew who did pro bono legal work for me. My family didn't help at the time. My grandfather was alive. He didn't help. My father didn't help. My aunt, my mom's sister didn't help, and my uncle and my brothers didn't help. So I had to take care of all of that. I had to run my mom's finances. I had to sell her house. I had to deplete all of her finances to zero so she could get Medicaid and veterans benefits so they would pay for her nursing home. And then I had to distribute all of the insurances. And um, so my mom was 48 when she got sick, and she died when she was 56. And my mom died when I was 25, and I had her funeral the same week that I got married. So basically, what I learned from that was you can find out who you can rely on, and you can't put your dreams on hold, and life is what you make it. And that's why when I turned 21, I decided I need to go into the military because that's my dream, and I can't let my mom being in a nursing home and any of that stuff stop me because of the circumstances of my family. So what my encouragement for you is, sorry, confidence is basically built through preparation, and clarity comes from being informed through intentional decisions, and progress is made through being disciplined and doing things one step at a time. And at KK Financial Solutions, your strength becomes your strategy. So I'm just going to recap today what I went over, that the military is really what shaped me. I found my purpose, so I help and teach people and help others to find their passion. Um, Integrity, service before self, excellence in all I do is my values. Quiet time, health, time with my soon-to-be spouse, fun, and volunteerism are the things that really shape me. Um, the pivots in my life were my baptism and my mother getting sick, and then really confidence, clarity, progress, and strength becomes your strategy. And what will you get at KK Financial Solutions? You will not get judgment about what you've done so far for your financial future. It is what it is. And my job is to get you from where you are now to where you want to be by setting goals and helping you achieve them, because that's what I did. And I try to talk and instruct in very easy to understand concepts. And I also like to use stories to make points. And my ultimate goal, whether you work with me or not, is to teach or coach you on what I know. And lastly, this is my contact information, and I have a QR code there that you can download a financial planning checklist free of charge. And I want to thank you for putting up with my emotional outburst. I was trying to get through this without having any type of emotions, but apparently I could not. So thank you, everyone, and we can open it up for questions.
So, Karen, I'm so glad that you feel safe enough to be able to be yourself. And your being vulnerable just makes your presentation and what you share just all so much more powerful and real. And so we love you and thank you for sharing your life with us and being vulnerable and being the first champion to be able to be showcased. And you did a beautiful job. So I just
Hey.
wanted to say that before anybody said anything, because I just so appreciate you. And I took notes. I learned so much about you. And you're a perfect example of what we want to accomplish with this champion program. So I'd love to have you guys mute yourself, just raise your hand and feel free to also give your, sense of where we're going with this program and how Karen did such a great job of leading us, and also any questions or insights or epiphanies you want to share. So, Marley, I saw your hand go up.
Karen, I want to thank you for your service. And I also want to it was very emotional. And I didn't know I'd be emotional just saying this. But I didn't come from a military family. I don't understand all of this. You gave me a view of the military I've never had before. And very insightful, and your values and It was amazing. My only comment, I don't have a lot of questions. My only comment is, how will anyone follow up and do what you did today? I think we should have started with someone else, maybe me, who hasn't accomplished much, and um and build up to you. But I do thank you for your service, all that you did. Thank you. I mean, it was an amazing insight to see where, your journey.
You're
And I had a similar experience in that I was an only child and had two elderly parents and an aunt who was single. And so I understand the stress that that kind of thing puts on you. But I was not 19, 20 years old when that happened. I was much older. Um, but you were just brilliant in what you shared. And thank you for being vulnerable.
welcome.
Yeah, Karen, I thought it was a beautiful share while I was literally on the way in the car coming back from Elastic training, where we were teaching these guys how to use sensation, which you remember from LaughtTech, I'm sure. But like to me, emotions belong in finance. And if people try to separate it, because like we need to know you, trust you, like you, want to be like you to hire you. And you made that very evident today that you are trustworthy, that you're capable, that you're smart, that you've been through the ringer and you're still there. And I'm so inspired by you. You're so wonderful. I still need help. So I'm going to call you for real this time. So great job. And I
Thank
think,
you.
again, the emotion was very, while it was delicate, it was powerful, but it was effective. Because when we start talking about losing our mom or our spouse, that's not something simple. And I love that you embrace it. It's freaking hard.
Hmm.
And there's these wisdoms that you have that you shared so beautifully. So thank you.
Go ahead, Gail.
Um, Thank you, Karen. I appreciate your vulnerability and thank you for serving. Um, I did not grow up in a military background, but lots of people think I did because I moved like every 2 years. My dad had a job that moved me a lot. So I kind of understand that part of it. Um, I think you did a great job. And yes, you are a very successful woman. And that is a little intimidating for the rest of us. But you did a great job of laying out what we can do and the things that we can talk about if we happen to be one of the champions on here, giving your background, just going through showing us how to get to know how people to get to know you. You showed us how to get to know you. And I think that was very valuable to have you come first. We all have our own story, and there's value in every one of our stories, no matter how successful we've been or where we've been in our life. There's value there. And we just have to be able to look at our own lives through some of the things that you went through here and then share that. So thank you so much for being vulnerable. I think it is important to be vulnerable. And I know maybe because you spent so much time in a man's world where there's less vulnerability, it's probably harder. But I think it's important to be vulnerable. Um, it shows your heart. Thank you.
Well, and I used to never talk about or share about being in the military or any of that kind of stuff when I first came into the financial realm.
I have known, we work with some people that are in the military, and there are things that the military teaches you that are very, very strong for building your own business and for doing what you've done. There are some good things there.
Kim, if you go ahead and unmute yourself, you're next. If you're still there.
Okay, let me put my calendar on, my camera on. I was washing dishes. Thank you, Karen. That was just amazing to get to know you like that. Um, wow, I just feel like so much closer to you. I've known you for so long, and I really feel like I know you now. And it was inspirational. Um, I've known about, I read your book, so I knew about the struggles that you had in, being in in the men's world. And yeah, that's, you know, we all have our we all have our journeys in life, and they're so different, and we learn different things. And I think this is just a fantastic, I'm just super excited about this whole process, this whole program that Cindy's doing with us, so that we get to know each other on a deeper level. Because when we know each other on a deeper level, that's where the relationships, like, they get so strong. We feel more comfortable referring business to each other, and we're there for each other when we need help, because we're all going to need help sometime.
Mhm.
There's going to be more things that there's going to be, we're all going to need help, and we'll feel more comfortable asking for help because we know each other better. We'll feel more comfortable offering help because we know each other. So I think this is fantastic. It was a great opening for us, and I just thank you for doing such a great job. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. Lori, go ahead and unmute yourself.
So, Karen, this was so great because A, I didn't know you wrote a book. Um, B, I'm just kind of started this year, so I haven't really known you. But what really stood out to me was that your mom was in the military and the history of women then, and then you being in the military. And, we don't talk about really how women were treated. And so, I mean, I think they've come a long way, but they're still that still has to be talked about. And so you were really brave to talk about it, and just seeing the progression, it was just really, really interesting. And yeah, it was wonderful to feel like, gosh, I know her whole lot better now. So thank you, and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Lisa, did I see your hand go up?
Is that me?
Yeah, did you want
Yes. Everything they said was perfect, Karen. I wish I had said everything too. I wish I would see you next meeting and give you a big hug. So here we are, hugging you.
Thank you.
Anyhow, I just love how your story has turned in positive steps all the way. You didn't become angry and bitter and just a negative person, like true Karen nowadays. So I just think you've turned all those things into a great positive thing for life, and your purpose is wonderful. Thank you for sharing all your heart.
Patrice?
Thank you, Karen, for your presentation. I wasn't really sure what this was going to be about. I didn't really know how to go about doing, the heart behind the daily hustle, but you did it so beautifully, and you just set such a great example for the rest of us that have volunteered to do this. So I really want to thank you for that. Also, I was just so impressed how your military experience has affected your values, and the story that you told, that was really beautiful. And also that you had wisdom for us. And I really appreciated the wisdom so that we could take that forward and be inspired by you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, I didn't know how to approach it either, but I thought, I got to tell a story. I got to tell a background before you can understand what my values are and how I got to that point, you know? Because 26 years is a big part of my life, and it shaped kind of who I am and where all of it came from, right? And it still shapes who I am now. It's like, as I was putting the presentation together, it's like, where did my volunteerism come from? And it's like, oh yeah, it came from when I was 16 and I started in the youth group and I did all that stuff. And I still like to volunteer.
It's such a good example of how in life nothing is wasted, and then we sometimes think that different things that we experience are compartmentalized. It was that chapter of my life, that time in my life, but it's just beautiful how the dots get connected and everything comes full circle. And when we can embrace it, I think that's where it's really the power and the beauty of being able to step into our true selves, what our gifts are, how our journey shaped us, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. Anybody else? Chuck, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, so Karen, yeah, I really admire you for what you've done. I didn't realize I had glimpses of some of the stuff you had done, knowing you for I don't know how many years I've known you, but I've always admired that integrity always seemed to be a really important aspect of your life. And that's something I really value in people because that is a lot less rare than it should be. But I must say, it is amazing your Air Force career.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody accomplish so much coming from being an enlisted person.
Mhm.
I myself was in the Air Force, so I have a little bit of background in this. But my goodness, what you accomplished was a real tribute to your character and you're like reinventing yourself. Because as we know, doing that in the military is not easy for a woman and not easy for anybody
Mm-mm.
because the military is an unforgiving environment. So I really give you a lot of credit. I think most people would fold before they would accomplish what you did.
Yeah.
So I give you great kudos for that. To me, it's so amazing. I can't believe it. I'm almost speechless that you did that. But I don't think you'd appreciate it unless you've been in the military.
Mm.
Because, you know, military puts barriers in front of everybody all the time, right? So I give you, so it's great. And then this career of reinventing yourself. I think it's amazing what you've done. And I think it all depends, you know, it's so much about your character and who you are. And, you know, I think people need to know this story because look at our world today. How many people are like you? Not many. So I give you credit. I appreciate that I know you in this lifetime. It's really great. So
Thanks.
good, great.
Kathy, feel free to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm technically challenged. Karen, wow, I admire I'm getting emotional too. Your perseverance, your courage, your resiliency. You are just a truly inspiring woman. So thank you for sharing your story. It's really one that everyone needs to hear. So thank you.
Well, I'm writing a second book, so you'll hear more.
We can't wait. We can't wait. Okay, so last call. I want to finish up and again mention what, continue mentioning what inspired you, what you didn't know already before, or if you have any questions for Karen. And I really appreciated, Karen, that you added at the end because we want to be bold about that, right? She shared a lot about her life, but how we could work with her. And so that's what we want to do in this, whole process as well is, you know, um, the know, like, and trust factor that Marcel talked about is so important. And yes, it's to get to know each other, who we can refer her to, who, getting to understand what makes Karen tick and makes her unique and makes her the amazing, beautiful woman that she is. The thing I want to share until I see another hand go up is Karen, I've always felt that although you've been in a man's world, in the military and in finance and the positions, especially understanding that today that you've taken, you've always maintained a femininity about you. And I just really admire you for that because some women tend to become more masculine, but your femininity has really served you well in those spaces. And the fact that you've been able to be promoted by merit in a man's world where they didn't want to promote you speaks even louder to how you've been able to maintain your sense of who you are in the midst of that, and you haven't lost it. You've only gained it. And I knowing you when you lived here and the different ways that we've interfaced, any organization that you show up in, and we're so grateful that you're here with us, even though you live in Arizona, is blessed by you and who you are. So thank you for that, Karen.
You're welcome.
Well, we're at 1 o'clock, but before we end, I just want to kind of get a quick sense. I mean, the sense was that from the comments that you guys like this format, and so I'm so glad you you do. What we did is we went ahead and brainstormed with Karen and Marcel and Patrice and Chuck and um, a number of us, what we wanted to see and how we wanted to create a program next. And so Marcel, I know you weren't here from the very beginning, but Marcel's scheduled for February 16th. So add the third Monday from noon to 1. Marcel's going to be sharing. Lori will be our spotlight speaker at our February 10th event. And then Lori, let me see. Yeah, Lori will be our March 16th. She'll do the Heart Behind the Hustle. And then Patrice is in April. We're working out May, but that will come together. And then June is Molly Clip. So what we thought was we get the first 6 months scheduled and kind of work out the kinks. But Karen, you made that look so smooth. I think the kinks have just gotten worked out. But yeah, we'll just develop this. And so you, as a champion, you have the ability to actually go into the back dashboard and sign up after June. I actually need to put the other dates in, so don't sign up before June. But after June, grab a spot for yourself. And we'd love to be able to learn more about you. It's open to all champions. And again, Karen Quirk is, I think, our only classic connector here. Welcome, Karen. But anyway, just thank you guys for joining us. We had 14 strong here. That's pretty exciting for the first time we launched this. So thank you all for joining us. Look forward to Marcel and others being able to share. And these will be recorded. They will be on the website in the champion program. And we got to find a good place for them to be posted on the website as well so that others can be able to listen to them. So any last comments before we close?